I'm going to bring on my guest today, episode 67, live from my drum room. Please welcome my very good friend, longtime friend, the great Anton Fig. Got to time that a little better so it's, and there he is.
I'm still getting there. Here I am.
Welcome,
How are you?
Anton. I'm great. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me into your lair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's good to see
Yeah.
you in your drum room in Montauk.
Yep. And you're in yours in Boston, right?
Yeah. Just
I'm looking.
south.
I see that star drum kit.
I just
I
got
see.
that. Yeah.
I see some gongs with a bullseye. That's like very British looking.
Yeah.
And I see. I don't know. Is that Charlie behind you?
That's a couple of Charlie pictures behind me.
Yeah.
And
fantastic. And a
Premier
nice old
set.
Premier kit. I used to have a Premier kit when I was 10, but I don't have it anymore. Yeah.
Well,
Beautiful.
the star set, I'll just quickly tell you the backstory. I just got that. And that's a replica of my very first drum set my dad bought me in the Sears catalog. So so I got that and very excited. And it sounds better than I remember them sounding. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Cool.
Good stuff. Yeah. So thanks for being here. I was just saying, as I brought you on, as I introduced you, that you were part of the episode, one of the episodes to Remember Charlie. And I want to thank you again for being part of that with Jim Keltner and Vinny and Pete Thomas and Charlie Drayton and Aaron Comas. And
I was honored to be part of such a great group and honoring such a great drummer and person. Yeah.
I know he thought the world of you.
Thanks. Yeah.
You sort of going a little bit out of sequence, but you told a great story during that show that in case people didn't see that, and the story, you told a few stories, but one of the stories you told had to do with Charlie being on the Letterman Show with his band back sometime maybe in the 90s and him showing up with the band. And then maybe you could just quickly tell that story just to sort of.
Yeah, in those, I think we were still at, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but the Letterman band used to, for better or for worse, used to play with a lot of the people that came on the show.
Yeah.
Later on, they kind of changed it. When we were at CBS, they changed it. But in the early days, the band backed up everyone and almost everyone. And Charlie came on with his band and they told him that he had to play with the Letterman band. And he said, what? And he said, yeah, you playing with the Letterman band. And he just made an about face and walked out of the show, which was just amazing. I mean, you can't blame the guy.
No.
And so he was completely within his rights. He did come back later with his band and played with his band. But it was great. It was great. I was all for it, to be honest.
I'm sure you were, Anton, and I loved it when you told the story because knowing Charlie, he probably did it like in the most polite way possible.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you the flip side of that story. If Charlie was always polite, but the flip side of that was James Brown was going to be on the show one time, and he with his band, and his band was down at SIR rehearsing on 25th Street, and the show was uptown, and so he got the Letterman band to play, for the rehearsal. And I remember him sitting, he came and sat at the drums and because I wasn't sure what to play exactly for this particular song. And he sort of went, ba-doo, 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 and he played this kind of like flat tire shuffle. So I got an idea, but it was all like, kind of strange to me. But anyway, I figured out what he meant. And we played and we rehearsed with them. And then suddenly, towards the end of the rehearsal, his band had been caught in traffic and they arrived. And so they came walking towards the stage to finish the rehearsal with them. And he just like put out his arm and he stopped them and he said, I'll play with these guys.
Wow.
And so I got to play I've played with him a few times on the show, but that was one of the times. I was a recipient of some good fortune there. But you know, like we backed up lots of people, and you know, I think it was just lucky circumstance because you know people are putting themselves on the line, and you know then you got to deal with a new band, and so you had to make them feel as comfortable as possible, like right off the downbeat, and you know you would see these people visibly relax once you started playing, and they knew like they were in good hands. There wasn't time to rehearse the band and get things right and all that. So it was an incredible responsibility on our part. But as a result of it, I got to play with just an incredible amount of people that I normally wouldn't have gotten to play with. And even if I got to play with them once, it still counts as kind of having playing with those people on national television. So,
absolutely.
you know,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know. No, it's I mean, I watched the show, maybe not every night, but all the time. And every night, well, pretty much every night, there was somebody there that the band was playing with, was backing up. And
so, you know, it brings me to another story about the Letterman Show. And this is like, so Paul said, you know, we're going to play with Miles Davis tomorrow. Now we don't know what's going to happen. So just show up and we'll see. So I get there and there's a drum machine center stage on like a velvet, like covering, like this beautiful throne of a drum machine, a big drum machine. And I'm going, oh God. So anyway, so they go, okay, well, you're going to try and play drums with it. So I play, of course, it's not in the monitors or anything. It's impossible to stay in with it. Oh. They go, why didn't you try sticks? Sorry, why didn't you try brushes? Oh, no, then they took the drum machine away. They say, why don't you try brushes? So I try brushes. The drum machine's gone. And I think, oh God, there's one more step and I'm out of there. You know what I mean? I can't go any further. Yeah. Anyway, they say, okay, no, brushes are going to be fine. Get rid of the drum machine. So then, because of my James Brown story, I don't ask everybody what I should play. But in this case with Miles, it was like a slow 3/4 thing. And then he would drop his hand and we'd go into like a funk thing. And then some way through, he'd drop his hand again and we go back into the 3/4 thing. And it was a Christmas carol that the Bill Murray movie, Scrooge, they played street musicians. So they were playing the song. They were doing the song. So I happened to again ask Miles, what should I play on this? These are the only two guys I asked, by the way. Normally I knew what to do. Although it doesn't sound that way, but normally I knew what to do. Anyway, so Miles comes up to me and he goes, "Roo, roo, roo, roo." Okay, but somehow I knew exactly what he meant. So we rehearsed the song a couple times, and well, maybe once, I don't know. And then, you know, you do the show, and then all of a sudden you got to come back and play the song. I don't know, you don't know it all that well. And we start. And I remember there was like a downbeat at the beginning, and I felt, oh, it didn't quite, and he did a bap. I thought, oh, I'm not sure if I just split the atom exactly right, you know?
Yeah. And
I thought he like looked at me, and then we started playing, and I suddenly noticed like he was so far behind on the beat, you know, intentionally, way back, like some of the rappers are like way. When you play with the rappers on the show, you can't listen to the vocal because they're so far back on the time. So I'm like, keep it where it's supposed to be, keep it where it's supposed to be, and then we are going to the funk thing, and then it's just like a soft funk, and then back out. And I said to myself, like, you know, this is not a time to be nervous. You know, this is like you worked your whole life to kind of play, like you're playing with Miles Davis on TV. And I felt like I was in the eye of a hurricane where like the center is very calm and the stuff is like swirling around you.
Yeah.
And it felt like really like centered. And then we got through the song and it was great. So afterwards, I said to Marcus Miller was playing. It was Marcus Sanborn and Will Hiram and Paul and myself.
Man, what a band.
I said, like, okay, I got to, I'd love to kind of meet him properly, you know? So I went to meet him, and he asked me where I was from. I told him South Africa. He said, oh, it's good you got out of there. And we were talking. I showed him a picture of my kid was 6 months old, or, you know, my first kid. And showed him the picture. And then he said to me, you got a good feel for them drums. And I went, oh, wow. I said, I better get out there before he clarifies that statement. But, you know, but, if there's like a second, if there's a second project, I said, thanks, you know, I got all I need now, I'm going. And so that's been like a building block for me, like, you know, for my whole life since then, because it's like, you know, Miles gave me the confidence, like if he said my feel's good, you know, what more do I need? And, you know, and that was like a really big moment for me.
That's, I'm going to tag onto that and say that must have been in the 80s, I'm guessing, because your older son is about my son's age, who's going to be 35 this year. Yeah.
Right. Probably late 80s.
Yeah, late 80s. So fast forward a few years later, I'm on the phone with Tony Williams, and he's asking me what cymbals you use. And then he said, hey, can you give me Anton's number? I did, you know, I almost, and I know you have a great story to tell, but I knew he wasn't pulling my leg, but he was like, he was asking about, he said he watches the show all the time. He loves the way you play, and he loves the sound of your cymbals. And like, you know, you think, can I call? I don't think he even said, do you think Anton would mind? I think he just said, like, can I have his number so I can call him? And then he called you.
Yeah. So I was out in my, out of town, close to where I am now. And he calls me, and I go like, he says, I've got all your cymbals from the Letterman Show, and I want you to tell me exactly how you set them up. And I go, man, but this is insane. This is ridiculous. What are you asking me for? You know, this is crazy. I mean, Tony is like the one person, and the only reason I don't sound like Tony Williams is because I can't do anything that he does. But I just love everything about him that he plays. You know, he developed his own language on the drums. You know, he sounds so much like himself. He's got incredible technique. He took drumming, you know, into the stratosphere. And I mean, I just love everything Tony. And so I explained the cymbals, what I did, but it just felt like completely surreal. And I was lucky enough that I actually got to play double drums with him 3 times in my life. The first time was George Russell was my teacher at the New England Conservatory in Boston. And he had a big band, and I played in the big band, and he was going to New York to perform it at Carnegie Hall. And he said, Tony's playing drums, but he can't make the rehearsal. Can you come down and play the rehearsal? I was a college kid.
Yeah.
So I go down, and I'm in the room rehearsing with all these like New York guys. It's like, you know, frightening. And then George says after the rehearsals, okay, Tony's coming to play the show, but we'll put you in the band so you can play in the band as well. And so I'm in the band, Tony's center stage, and then we're playing the music, and then it sort of gets into the section. And all of a sudden, he plays this break, and he turns around to me to trade with me. Let's trade. It was like, oh my God. So all I can tell you is that if you see the bathwater going down the drain, that's what I felt like. I felt like I was in this centrifugal force, just like getting washed down the bathtub, you know? Yeah. It was crazy. And then he came on the show, and we played together. And then the third time he came on the show, they put the 2 drums together, and we played like the whole show together.
I think I saw that, yeah.
Unfortunately, the cameraman didn't understand the concept of 4s. So while he's playing fours, they're showing me just like sitting there, like, you know, watching him. And when I'm playing, they're showing him. Anyway, so, you know,
when
I still have his sticks from that day. And so after that, he said to me, you know, he kind of enjoyed himself. He said, well, you know, if you don't do the show, you know, maybe I can sub, you know, on the show. Because I think he just liked the experience. And so a month or two later, I had to go to South Africa. And so I called Paul. I said, Tony said he'll do it, you know. So they called him and he said he would do it. And it was all booked. And then right around that time, he went into hospital for his gallbladder and passed away.
God, 25
so it never
years
happened.
Next month.
How many years?
25 years it'll be.
Wow.
In February.
So, you know, it's my young son goes to USC and he's in the music program. So he's studying with Will Kennedy and Patrice Rushen and all those people and Alfonso Johnson on bass and, you know. Anyway, and we listen to Tony, you know, it's so great because like, you know, like there's a whole other generation now listening to Tony. And we're finding like different songs that he did and records and stuff we didn't know about so much. And, you know, and it still sounds as fresh and as exciting as ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know. I was gonna ask you when the first time he came on the show, so it was like the second time you met him or played with him. Did he remember the time at Carnegie Hall, like all those years before when you were at NEC?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think we spoke about it. Nor I'm thinking when I was on the phone to him, I don't think I said to him, you know, we played together at Carnegie, you know. It was so crazy because it was one of my first gigs. I was still living in Boston. It might have been my first gig in New York. I mean, think of that. First gig in New York, playing Carnegie Hall with Tony Williams. I mean, you can only go down from there.
I was going to say that.
And not only that, as I was about to go on stage, they had like heavy union guys then. The union guy came up to me and said, let me see your card.
Oh, man.
And I didn't have one. And he was going to stop me. And then suddenly someone called his attention and he turned around to talk to the guy. And I just ran on stage. And got on stage. So it was like,
I thought you were going to say the crisp handshake, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I was going to, that's a great segue though, Anton, because I wanted to talk about NEC and I it's perfect that you mentioned that, you know, that it was that time. And I was just going to add to that. I'm guessing where you were still in college at the time, you had what a lot of us had when we were young and that almost sort of fearless, like maybe now if that happened, you'd be like, oh, I mean, you would do it, but you'd probably be more nervous now than when you're 20 years old, because you just kind of go, all right, I'm going to just go do this, you know. But it was Tony, so I'd imagine there's never a time you wouldn't be nervous.
No, you got to accept the challenge at all times. But you know, and you know, then everything was also fair game, and you're working your way up. So you know, you know, try everything and do. I did everything. I played any gig all the time just to kind of keep going. You know, keep working.
I remember you telling me that when you were at NEC and talk. So you were born in Cape Town in South Africa and started playing.
Yeah, I played really young. I mean, I was probably 4, something like that. And then when I was 6, my grandfather bought me a snare and bass drum because I was so into playing. Yeah. And every year he added the tom, and by 10 I had the full set. That was the premier kit. Right. And then eventually I played in lots of local bands. We won the Battle of the Bands and all the stuff. We were like a big local band, different bands. And then when I was 16, I got a mod orange Ludwig kit, which was sent. My dad got it ordered from Chicago, came on the boat, took like what just seemed like decades, but it was probably only a few months. Came over to Cape Town, and it was this beautiful mod orange kit, which I then eventually brought back to America and still have it. So it's a real like 60s mod orange kit.
Worth a lot of money too, those models.
It might be, yeah. Anyway, I used it on a side note. I used it on a session with Oz. I was doing a recording with Oz Noy, and the engineer says, "This is the worst shit I've ever heard." He said, "The drums, they're all out of round, and there's like harmonics going all over the place and all that." But I still love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's just like such a cool looking kid, and I mean, it's a rock kid, so it's meant to be hammered,
Yeah, I was gonna just say, I love vintage drums. It's all I own, but a lot, and people freak out about those old Ludwig and old Gretsch drums, but they were kind of hit or miss, to your point, because
right.
A lot of my stuff I bring to a guy locally who shows me how out of round, how the edges are all messed up on drums.
Right.
But anyway, they've got a vibe. So
yeah,
cool.
Absolutely.
So you came over to go to NEC. You moved to Boston to attend New England Conservatory.
Yeah.
And you studied with my father-in-law, Vic Firth.
Right.
And also for timpani and classical.
Right. So here was the weirdest thing was I had sent in a tape to get in from South Africa. And in those days, all you knew about was Berkeley and New England Conservatory. But I had a friend who was at New England, and he suggested I go there. And it was a different kind of school, and so I applied for the jazz department, and I sent in a tape, and I didn't think I had a chance in hell. And I get a letter back, "You've been accepted to the classical department." And I'm going, "Well, classical? Okay, well, I'm in." So I went, and that's why I studied with Vic. But while I was there, I also did the jazz stuff. So I got to not only play in the orchestras and all that, but I also played in the big bands and studied with Jackie Byard and George Russell. And had a couple, like for a year, Mel Lewis was there. And so, I got to do everything. And at the end, they said, "Well, you can have whichever degree you want." And I said, "Well, I'll take the classical," because I thought if I go to New York and say I've got a jazz degree, then they'll beat me up or something.
Classical is serious cred.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know. And the great thing about Vic was that he made you feel like if you didn't do the work, you were wasting his time. He was such a busy guy. Mm-hmm. Running from the orchestra, teaching, and he had outside interests and, collecting stuff, whatever. And he just made you feel he was like no frills or all business kind of, and made you feel like if you didn't do the work, you were wasting his time. Yeah. So, you put in the work for him. And, so I got between him and all the orchestra stuff, all the big band stuff, all the small jazz stuff. And then plus I was playing out at nights with different bands all the time. And so I had for 4 years, I had an incredible education.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that obviously made you the versatile drummer that you are today and became, right? I mean,
well, I grew, it turned out, for the Letterman Show, you needed, to have a wide variety of music. But growing up in South Africa, I started off listening to like early rock and roll, mm-hmm. And then of course the Beatles and all that came in, and the English Invasion, and I had all that, and then we also listened to a lot of James Brown and Ray Charles, Lloyd Price, and I listened to like all kinds of stuff. So by the time I saw Paul, I realized, and I don't know how, but I just knew all these songs, a ton of them. And, I think that really helped me because I felt like I could play semi-authentically in a lot of different styles.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to just go one way.
Right. And was there, I'm going to get to the Letterman time too, but I was going to ask you so you graduated from NEC, moved to New York, and got busy pretty quickly, right? I mean, you kind of jumped in.
Yeah. Well, I remember the musicians in Boston said, "You go to New York, it's going to take you about a year to get work." And it took about a year to the day. And then I started off doing weddings and bar mitzvahs and all, and I was still, when I went to Boston, I got completely into jazz. Had been a rock drummer my whole life, and I got completely into jazz for 5 years. That's all I listened to. That's all I played. I was deeply into it. And I got to, after I was in New York for about a year or so, I noticed like people were saying, you got to get back to your roots. And people were like discovering Africa and all that, going back to, it was always like wearing dashikis and getting back to your roots, And I thought, wait a second, my roots are in rock. So I started to play with rock bands in New York. And then I really started to work like immediately and got all kinds of gigs, like right away. And at the same time, I formed a band with some friends of mine from South Africa. We'd had a band in Cape Town. And so we were auditioning bass players. And this guy came to audition who actually didn't get the gig, but he said, I've got this friend, Ace Frehley, and he's looking for a drummer for his solo record. And, because I'd been out of the rock world, I wasn't really even much aware of Kiss at all.
Yeah.
But to me, they were a band on the side of a bus. I'd see the big post on the side of a bus. And so I went up and played with him, and I did a couple of rounds of demos, and then he asked me to do his record, and his record came out really, really good. A lot of stuff, I found happened, you do one thing and it leads to another. Like I auditioned for some other band because their drummer was going off to play with Dylan. And through that, their producer got me to Link Ray. And then the producer got me to Joan Armatrading, and I did those records. And ended up playing with Link for a long time. And I did the Me, Myself, I record, which is one of Joan's biggest records.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. And then I started to work in New York a lot. Cyndi Lauper. I played a few cuts on a Dylan record. I played on Jagger's solo record, a few cuts. And I started to kind of really get around.
Yeah. And jumping back to Ace, and so it was working on Ace's solo record that, for whatever the reasons were, that at the time the producer or whoever felt that Peter Criss couldn't fulfill his obligation to do the record, that they brought you in to do.
I think like I don't know. I don't know the exact story, but I think he broke his arm or something and he couldn't play, and they had to do it. And they got me into play. And then, after I did Dynasty, and after Dynasty, I did Unmasked. And I think that's because they must have broken his other arm. But I'm not sure. But anyway, I got to do those two records. But the one thing that was nice about it was they didn't really, I didn't know them as well. I knew Ace really well. I was good friends with Ace, we got to be really good friends from the solo record. And no one really told me what to play. They just let me interpret the music however I wanted to. So it wasn't like you got to play this way, this is how Kiss sounds and all that. They just let me just kind of play it. And it's funny, recently I went back, I haven't listened to those records since those days. But my son has got me into listening to a few cuts here and there again.
That's cool. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah.
And at the time you weren't credited, right? That was like in those days, that was
at the time, those were the days when people could keep a secret. Apparently in these days, that's impossible. But there it was just like we're going to play on the record. We're going to pay you really well, but you can't tell anybody. Shake hands. That was it. And I didn't. I never told anybody until I think a book came out, a Kiss book came out by Gene, I think, and it said that I played on Unmasked. And then they released a remastered version of Dynasty, and it credits me on drums. So then after that, I said, fine. They put it out there first, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. And that's pretty much common knowledge, but it was always a very quiet thing.
Yeah, that's you honored your commitment.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Cyndi Lauper, and that's you on Girls Just Want to Have Fun. That's real drums.
Yeah. I mean, they
Yeah.
had me in the studio, just snare and bass drum, just pounding away like a drum machine.
Yeah.
There's one song on the record that has real drums. On Time After Time, I think I'm just playing like room clicks or something. The rest is a drum machine.
Yeah.
All on pretty much all the other songs, I'm pretty sure that's they had me sit there. I sat there for days just playing like a drum machine.
Yeah. And I didn't know that until I met you. I think we talked about it one time, and I just assumed, because it was at a time when almost everything in the world of pop was coming out was drum machines. 1983.
Right.
And but there's such a human feel to, like, Girls Want to Have Fun, just want to have fun. It's
Yeah.
So it's nice to know it's you and a machine, so to speak. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, as far as I know, I sat there and played just like the machine. I played those parts.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what they use. I always
Yeah.
been under the impression that's me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so that was like, and you continued to work doing tons of sessions, and then the drum chair on the Letterman Show, Steve Jordan leaves the band, it becomes available. And did you audition for that, or was
what happened there was, Steve would take off quite a bit, and often Charlie Drayton played.
Yeah.
But they were both out of town. It could have been around the time they were playing with Neil Young. I'm not sure. And so I would see Paul around town, and I would always say, let me sub on the Letterman Show. And he'd say, oh, you'll get your chance. But it never happened. And then I actually did Paul Butterfield's last record with Paul Schaefer. And I still didn't get called. And I'd done Joan Armatrading's record with Paul, and nothing happened. Anyway, one night I was playing with Robert Gordon and Chris Spedding, and they came down. And I knew they were checking me out. And so Paul asked me he said, Steve's going to be away for a week. Can you do a week on the show? I said, sure. So come down and rehearse. I did the rehearsal. He said, actually, he's going to be away for 2 weeks. Can you do 2 weeks? I said, absolutely. So I did the 2 weeks. Steve came back. Then one day, Steve just showed up really late, and they called me, and I ran right on stage and played the show till Steve came, and then he took over. And then a week or two later, Paul calls me up and said, Steve is leaving the show, and the show's yours if you want it. And so I said, well, I have to think about it. I know I didn't. I know. I said, yes, please.
Man, 30 years. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that show, it was 29 years, I think.
29 years. Yeah.
29 years. Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah. And you played the shit out of it, Anton. I've
thanks.
many times.
Yeah. Well, having all that background of all this different kinds of music and being able to play, and basically my philosophy was, if you get a good groove going and you play some of the nuances of the style, you can kind of, get the feeling across.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would often have, if we played with an artist, we'd get the record right before, we'd make a chart, and, you had to walk in knowing the music.
Right.
So you'd have to make it sound right the very first time. Some artists would only do it once, twice, some would do it 4 times. And then you do the show, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you got to do the song again. So it was a whole, different set of muscles.
Yeah,
it wasn't the kind of gig where you could just close your eyes and relax. You had to be on your toes all the time.
Yeah, I would think so. And so when you would you get the information, like you're going to play today with Tony Bennett? Would you get the tune that day, or would you get it the day before?
Usually, like the day before.
Day before, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes a couple of days before. I mean, were always exceptions to the rule. Sometimes there'd be music there, sometimes there wouldn't. Sometimes you'd make, if it was complicated, you made your own chart. Like when we played Higher Love with Stevie Winwood, that's a very complicated drum chart because it's all drum machine.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's like 4 separate things going all at the same time. You had to kind of make it into one part that worked and catch all the important stuff. So that, I had to sit down and write that out kind of slowly. But I found that if you write out a chart yourself, by the time I got through the chart, I could pretty much play it, just working my way through the song.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, was kind of a regular practice for you, was to like write out a chart. And I mean, I'm sure some of these songs you knew kind of just, if it was a James Brown tune or something, you kind of knew the form of the song, but my point being that being able to read was really key to just being able to have it in front of you and know the form of the song. And
it's one thing knowing the song, and it's another thing like really knowing the song. And so sometimes when you get deeper into it, you think you know it, but there's all these other kind of subtleties going on in the song that you haven't heard.
Yeah.
So, you had to get pretty deep into it, and you had to also know, like there were certain things that you could maybe ignore and certain things you had to play. And even in the break songs, like say you were playing Born to Be Wild or something, and the break in the middle,
yeah,
so like that is the kind of thing that you would play for sure, because that's like a signature part of the drum fill.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't necessarily play everything else perfectly, or certainly I wouldn't. You just get the essence of the feel of the groove and you play your own way. But when we backed up an artist, we had to be more specific.
Right. Yeah, like you say, a song like Higher Love that has all those parts are such a part of the song that you're right, it would be missing if you didn't have some of those little
you couldn't just play it straight. I mean, there was like the tamale thing happening, and there was all kinds of like chattering stuff going on, and the patterns were changing, a couple of odd bars, there was a lot to keep track of.
It must have been great playing with Will Lee every night too.
Fantastic. I played with him 29 years, 4 days a week. Were incredible. I mean, he's such a solid bass player. He's such a musical player, and knowledgeable. And so it was really great and dependable. I knew like if we were together, we would, it was in the right place.
Yeah, I was, when you were talking about playing with James Brown and just or some of these guys, I was thinking that having like a, and I'm sure Will felt the same way about you, like having kind of a rhythm partner like Will gave you that sort of solid foundation, knowing that, you know what I mean? That, with you guys locked in, it's going to be, it's going to be good. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of time, like the drums can be really simple and the other instruments can be doing all the funky stuff. You know what I mean? It doesn't all have to come from the drums, but it's all got to slot in the right kind of cog way, for it to work. But he, so sometimes I could just play really straight ahead and he could do all that stuff around it.
Got a couple of questions, Anton, have come through from some guys watching. Anthony Casina is asking, could you talk about the room you're in now? It looks like you're in seclusion. You kind of are, but it's your studio. Maybe we were talking about it offline. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the room you're in, the studio.
Yeah. Well, it's got cement walls, as you can see behind me. And then the ceiling is, I can't move the camera, unfortunately. The ceiling is got padding and beams, and the floor's got carpets. So that it's a mixture of dead space and live space. Mm-hmm. And it's quite a big room in that I can get, room mics a fair amount away. I mean, it's a home studio, so it's not I don't have like a perfectly tuned room. I don't have the most expensive mics. I don't have like the best gear, but I've got like a bunch of stuff that I can make it sound really, really nice. And it's, it's below ground, so you can't hear it outside.
That's great.
But if you're in the house, it's deafening.
that's your
so
everybody's watching.
It's and I have a family, so you know what I mean. I can't, I have to pick my spots.
Is everybody watching? Anton is at his place in Montauk.
No. Don't say where it is.
Okay, don't say where it is. But anyway, But are they all there now? So if
I started to play now, they'd be
get
really
the banging on the ceiling.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
There was another. My good friend Neil Porter, who's the singer in my band, Grand Theft Audio, is watching, and he's asking who some of your favorite artists were to play with on the show. It's a great question, Neil.
Well, obviously James Brown. Miles probably takes the cake. Yeah. We played with Springsteen on the last show. That was very exciting. We played with Tony Bennett. There was so many. Played with Eddie Vedder. That was great towards the end. I didn't play with them, but I loved hearing them. Was the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
And there's so many. It's there's no. I don't ever do the favorite thing that much because it's overwhelming. Quite honestly, I wish I could remember all the people that I've played with, because I did about 6,000 shows, and it's like you just can't remember. They sort of blend into maybe 10 shows or something. I feel lucky. I did get to play with an awfully great crop of people.
Yeah. I was going to say this too, no exaggeration. It would probably be easier for you to name the people you didn't play with than the people you did play with.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a total number, and not your favorites, but it's like everybody was on that show.
That's true. I mean, there was another show that I did, which was the Bob Dylan's 30th anniversary. And that was in Madison Square Garden, and I was part of the band. I used to play Booker T and the MGs, and so I was in the band along with Jim Keltner, and we backed up everybody on the show, just about everybody. But there was and all the artists did Dylan numbers, and we did one with Eric Clapton. Don't think twice, and we played. And he played a couple solos, and then he sang a few more verses, and then a couple more solos. And then, like on the last solo, it was like he turned on the afterburner or something. And like it went into hyperspace. It was just like, oh, that's why it's Eric Clapton. It was it just like took off. It was unbelievable. Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, I feel lucky to have had that experience in my life.
Plus, I was thinking about this morning when Kelly and I were having breakfast, and I said, and I looked it up to make sure I wasn't dreaming, but I don't know if you still do, but for years, you guys were the house band for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Right.
So you'd be, when it was a band being inducted, the whole band would play, but you guys were the band that was, the house band for it.
Right. Yeah, we got to play. I remember we played a version of Shaft with Isaac Hayes, which was great. We played, and I wish I could find the tape. This is like before it was televised so much.
Yeah,
there were more free falls, and there was one night with the Who where I think it just seemed to be the Who and me. I can't remember. Maybe Paul was on stage. I'm not sure, but hardly anybody playing with the Who. That was like, but I can't find the tape of that. And I will say they would drag all these guitarists on stage, like the best in the world, and everybody playing together to an absolute racket. It was just like, like everybody tuning up, everybody playing at the same time. It was insane.
I know there's maybe a few guitar players watching, but just so you guys know, for us drummers, that's kind of our worst nightmare. There's that many
No, no,
guitars.
it was fantastic. But it was always funny to me that like all these the great, most disciplined, fantastic geniuses in the world all together at the same time, all playing at the same time.
Yeah, no,
Crazy.
that's amazing. That is
Yeah.
amazing. I said to you, I think we were off the air, but I mentioned my my late aunt, my dad's sister, who they used to watch your show every night. And I just have to tell this story. And I've told you this before, but and then and it ties into your son Aaron. But um, whenever I would talk to them on the phone or I would see them, they would say, we saw your friend on TV last night. And my aunt, who lived to be 95 and passed away a few years ago, would say to me, is he that handsome in person? He's so handsome. And I would tell you that, and you would get embarrassed by it. And you'd say, well,
Yeah.
tell her I said thank you very much. And
Yeah.
and where I'm going with the story is I'm certain it was after one of the Modern Drummer festivals when they'd have the dinner afterward, you know, like on the Sunday night, the banquet, whatever. And I think it was one of the years Sean Pelton played. You were there with your son Aaron, who was maybe, I don't know, like 4 or 5 at the time. The first time I met him.
Oh no,
And
my first son. My first, maybe it was Austin.
no, I think this was Aaron. I think this was your younger son. This was
Oh,
maybe about
okay. Okay.
15, 10 years ago.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay, fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we were having dinner, you and your son Aaron, Sean Pelton and I was doing this trick that Aaron loved, this paper bag trick.
Yeah.
He loved it. I was throwing the marble in the air.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. Great.
so I called my aunt from the dinner and I put you on the phone to talk to her, and I just want to tell you, it made for like years after that, she talked about it, how it was amazing that you said hello and you said, you know, said to my dad, your son's a nice boy. He's a very nice boy. So anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you know, as you know, I would at my clinics, people would say, I would say, and deadly serious. I didn't get the Letterman show because I was like the best drummer in the world. I didn't get it because I was like the fastest, the guy with the best time or the best technique or the best anything. I got it purely because I was the best looking. And after that, like I felt like I lost the audience. I was stunned. Hey, they thought that can't be true.
It still makes me laugh. No, because you'd have this like pause afterward. You'd go, you'd say, I didn't get it, you know, for all these reasons, and you'd pause. I got it because I was the best looking, and it would always bring the house down. It was,
Yeah.
no, it was great. It was. Oh, Anthony liked my bag trick. Yeah, I do that now
Yeah.
for my grandkids. My
Yeah.
granddaughter, of course, has figured it out, but my grandson hasn't. So, anyway.
Great.
You
Very
can
impressive.
hire me. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
hire me
for
for
parties.
birthday parties.
Yeah, sure.
Oh man. Well, Anton, I won't keep you too much longer. We could go on for a long time, but I'm going to just see if there's some more questions. I don't want to leave anything on the table here, but let's see. There's always questions I see afterward that I wish I got to. Danny O'Keefe is asking how it was playing with Jim Keltner stylistically.
Well, you know, for that show, I mean, he's a very he's a very individual drummer, sort of like quirky and does like different stuff. The show required for me to be the more kind of power drummer and for him to do stuff around that, I think. So,
Right. Kind of the anchor,
you know,
so to speak. Yeah.
yeah, I just sort of anchor it and he did the stuff around it. But, you know, it's like, he's an amazing drummer and it was fantastic being up there with him. And he's a fabulous drummer. And I really love listening to him actually when he's playing. I mean, he's quite capable of handling it all on his own. You know, that record that he did with the West African guitarist, forgotten the name of it right now, with Rai Kuda and the West African guitarist. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's just fantastic. The drumming is so beautiful on it.
Yeah.
And I just heard a George Harrison thing that he did, an old George Harrison thing that was just, the drumming was just amazing on it. Awesome.
Like from the 70s or
Yeah.
from the 70s.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. I know. Jim is just,
he's amazing.
Continues to be.
He's amazing. And he just comes up with stuff. You know, he once had a drum kit that was all snare drums. Everything was snare drums. And I said to him, how did you come up with that? It's crazy. How did you come up with it? He said, and just boredom. Which I thought was like, wow. You know, so he just, you know, got a restless mind, wanted to try different things. You know, he's creative and always searching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like I always have to bring our friend Charlie Watson to the conversation, but Charlie used to talk about that. He loved Jim Keltner, adored him, and he would talk about just what you just said, that he was this constant changer of things, like, and you know, not so much, and he did invent things, but he would talk about just how Jim could find these other ideas, like you say, all snare drums, just and make it be a cool thing, you know, and have it not be some crazy oddball idea, have it actually be a functioning idea. Yeah, I hope to have Jim on sometime soon. We've been talking about.
Yeah, you'd be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you too, Anton, and this is a question that just came up from Dale Boothby asking, did you play in a band called Spider?
I did.
And you did, and that was kind of like one of the first sort of big bands in the States that you played with, right? When you came.
Well, that was the band that had a couple of South African friends of mine, and that was the band where we were auditioning the bass player that I got to Ace with. But we had a top 40 hit called New Romance, and our song was Better Be Good to Me, which Tina Turner took our version, and her version is very, very similar to our version. But our band, Holly Knight was in our band, who went on to write out a huge number of hits.
Oh, yeah, huge.
And so, you know, we recorded it, but we didn't have a hit with it. She had the hit with it, but it was our song.
I didn't know that.
And it was it was a great band. Really, those records are nice. They sound very 80s now, but it's a really good pop band.
Yeah.
Really excellent.
I remember seeing your picture. I had that I still have it somewhere, the 1981 Zildjian drummer setup book that they had at that time. And you were a Zildjian artist going that far back, and your band credit at that time was Spider.
Right. So, yeah, I used the symbols on the Zildjians on that record. And, you know, it was amazing because Zildjian, gave me symbols, and I wasn't really that well known at all. And they gave me symbols. And so, 6 years later, when I was able to put the symbols up on the TV, I really felt great that I could kind of, pay back.
Wow. Yeah. And then some. Yeah.
And then, and I've been with them. I mean, looking around now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, there's 11s that are just set up right now. I look like your room. Yeah.
I know. I was going to tell whoever had asked about your room that there's a number of drum sets set up in there.
Yeah. Well, the reason for that is, like, I've got a kit where I can just record and it's all beautifully dialed in. But then I have a couple other sets. One I sort of practice on, but it has a big 26-inch bass drum. And different cymbals. So if I need a big sound, I can just move certain mics, and then I got another one here's got like a 20-inch and an 18-inch bass drum, just to do different stuff and just drag the mics over. And I have the one kit that's properly mic'd up, because, like, sometimes you don't use the right mic or the hi-hat mic, but if you're sending tracks to people, they want to feel like they're getting their money's worth, and they want to have a mic on everything. So I have to do one kit that way.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, we could go on and on, but we'll leave it kind of at that for now, and maybe we'll do another one of these down the road and get into some deeper Anton stuff.
Yes. Well,
No, I really appreciate you coming out of
yeah,
hibernation to do this.
hibernation, exactly. Well, in it's crazy times, and
Yeah.
it's wreaked havoc on the industry. I mean, I was on the road with Joe Bonamassa, and we got pulled off the road. When was it? Like when the COVID hit,
About almost 2 years
and
ago. Yeah.
yeah, and then I went back and did a little bit more with him, but it's like one of the things hasn't even come out yet, and then I did a new album that just came out, but it's like it's too crazy to try and tell. You don't know what's happening from one week to the next. Things are getting cancelled. It's hard. It's dangerous to be out there.
Yeah.
You don't want to be part of a gathering that's a super spreader. And it's just not conducive to it. So what I found in like being at home is like I've gotten into other things. I've done all different kinds of music. I've done some like movie music. I've done different kinds of drum things. I'm like, it's allowed me to kind of play different ways. I'm not kind of playing for the same situation all the time, which requires a certain amount of chops. And the only thing that I really miss right now about not being out there is road chops is something that you just can't duplicate. Just really getting good road chops and like playing a song where you can really shape the song and like make it really smooth and, really craft it and play it perfectly, which is not to necessarily say play it exactly the same every time, but just play it and get all around the corners as a band and really smooth, know where you're going, set up things and all that. Because I've spent most of my life just kind of playing off the cuff and being very spontaneous and very improvising. So that was really fun. But I'm kind of enjoying like opening up again and playing like just all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
And right. Plus I toured for 6 years, and he doesn't just go out for like a couple months in the summer. It's all the time, constant with like little side projects in between. So 6 years I was barely home.
That's
and it's nice when you're playing, but there's the other 21 hours of the day.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to maybe play. I would go out play with other people, different music. You know what I mean, and then find what's going on in that stuff.
Yeah.
Different. I'm not again. I love touring, but it's like things run their course and have their time.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, Anton. And you made a good point about it's great to get up and play, but the other 21 hours every day that you're away from home, that, after a period of time, that gets old. It doesn't matter how much fun the gig is.
It was fun, especially in the beginning, but start going back to the same places over and over. It becomes a little bit groundhog-ish day.
Yeah.
But it's not to say, I mean, look, everybody can't tour like the Stones, and be in a city and then fly off, and then they just tour a little bit. They tour for 2 months or something, and then they're off for a long time. Right. But that's a whole different thing. You get yourself really up for that. It's not like that's your day to day all the time, every day, all the time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's definitely, I think, a specialness to it for them when they've had, especially if they have 2 or 3 days off between a show, they can sort of get that, they can recharge themselves and get that.
Yeah. I mean, I think they really maximize for the show.
Yeah.
As opposed to it's another show, winding your way till the end.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I have to say that it really was fun.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things later this year are going to get sort of back to normal, and maybe you'll find yourself out doing something else.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, I know we all wanted to
Yeah, to go away. Well, that's why I'm in the whatever the word is, chamber here. It's
Yeah.
like I don't see any COVID in here.
No, we're the same way. We are very isolated. We are not
Yeah.
going out to restaurants or anything. My band, we sort of canceled all the gigs that we had for this month and last month. And well, maybe we might do one at the very end of this month. We're going to see how things look. But we're in this band that plays weekly, but we don't want to be a super spreader. We don't want to be the cause of a
Right.
of
Right.
a big problem. So
Right. I know quite a few musicians who've got it, who had it.
Yeah.
I did a recording date, and I was like double masked, the whole day in the studio. You know what I mean? Backing away from people. It's it was nice to play with everyone, of course.
Mhm.
I've done a few gigs here and there, and but again, you're all taped up and all that stuff. It just doesn't feel.
Yeah.
I don't know when that's all going to come back, but the thing is, this is life, and we just got to roll with it and go with it, make the best of it, and we'll come out to the other side, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, Anton, thank you so much for doing this. It's been
My
such a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you too.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And even though you're not on TV anymore, you're still the best looking drummer on TV.
Yeah, right. Not even in reruns. Not even the reruns age me. Yeah.
When I used to tell Max Weinberg that you were the best looking drummer, he didn't appreciate that either.
No, I'm sure not. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks
Big
a lot.
for Anton Fig.
Hi to everybody that's out there. No, thanks for tuning in, and great to talk. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Anton.
All righty.
I'm going to end the live stream, and then we'll say goodbye in the room here. So.
Okay, sure.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week on Wednesday with Jerry Brown, 2 p.m. Eastern time. But again, thanks for watching. Big hand for Anton Fig.